Hello and welcome to Graphite Grind. This is a show that I used to have back in the day that I'm bringing back. I just need people to know, like, when they see my logo and when they see, like, cartoon drawings or, like, logos like my tiger logo or anything of the sort that I did a little bit of courses in Photoshop in college. I wasn't like the best, but I draw on occasion. I'm working on some art projects. I'm not the best artist. Like, I've seen a lot of people doing art online, but I try to diversify. I try to do, drawings and various things, not just one thing. So every once in a while, I try to work on faces and other stuff, kind of like that. So, I feel like a lot of people concentrate on drawing bodies more than they're drawing faces. And I feel like, are you actually accurately drawing a person if you can't draw any resemblance of their face? I'm like, well, if you're drawing people and you're like, hey, this is you, and it's basically a bug-eyed creature, and it's like they just have to be swallowing the bullet, or just like some people feel like everybody looks like an anime face, and I'm like, I don't think so. I feel like, you know what I'm saying? There needs to be a little bit of diversity in the faces. So that's just how I feel about it. I know there's a lot of people that will draw tons of different women similarly. Like, here's what women look like. I'm like, oh, that's what one type of woman looks like. I've met a decent amount of people, and I'm like, all of them have different faces. So I feel like if you can't draw, if you can't draw a million different faces, are you really drawing different people? I feel like the answer is no. So I draw faces every once in a while. I also draw cars, and for some strange reason, some people draw cars and some people don't. And I'm like, well, eventually I want to draw some sort of story-driven comic book sort of thing, and that's what I'm working on now. So I'm like, you're gonna have to draw buildings. You're gonna have to draw things inside the buildings and things outside the buildings, and cars need to be drawn. When I came up, there's a comic book called Gunsmith Cats, and it was pretty good. I liked it, and it had some sort of license with Ford because the main character in the comic book drove an old school Mustang, and the whole thing was an anime sort of comic book, but there were like real life things. There was no fantasy. It was all real life. It supposedly took place in, like, I think 70s or 80s Chicago, and there were Japanese characters in the story, but not all the characters were Japanese. Some of them were different ethnicities from different countries. Not all American. Some were American though, and it was like a police bounty hunter story. It wasn't a fantasy story or like a samurai story. It was literally like a bunch of cars and guns and girls, and that's what was their tagline. And they made sort of like a movie. It was like a 3-part series where it was kind of together in a movie if you could get it on DVD. And there was like a precursor to that where it was like, you know, other characters that are kind of in the universe that had their own sort of stuff before that. But it was a lot of cars in it. Some of the cars were Japanese cars. A lot of the cars were made up. Some of them were like hybrid customs. But I thought it was really cool that they didn't focus so much on the characters' appearance, except for a little bit of the hairstyle, the faces weren't that very varied. Some of the faces were varied of the men, but most of the women had sort of like, the wide-eyed anime face. But the cars were like some of the cool stuff because they were like car chases, and I have almost all of those books. I thought they were great, and nowadays nobody draws cars. They always just draw the sexiest woman they can find. So I've been drawing cars every once in a while, and I try to look at a picture of a car, and I'm like, well, it's basically a curvy box. And I'm like, everybody should be able to draw cars. Why don't they draw cars? So I was always wondering why people just don't draw cars. And I'm like, I started looking at the people that are like, I'm an artist, I'm better than you and stuff. And I started looking at some of the art, and I'm like, there's nothing in the background. They have just colored sheeted backgrounds that don't have things in them. Like they don't have chairs, they don't have windows. I'm like, they don't have any scenery. Every once in a while, like you see professional artists, of course, do that sort of stuff. But then they're like artists that have been doing this for years, and they just never focused on those other things, or they do them like rarely. And when you start trying to work on bigger projects, you need to work out all those kinks instead of, I can draw sexy women. They're like, can you draw men? Can you draw children? Can you draw old people? Can you draw other things besides just sexy women, So this is what this show is about. I don't want to beat that into the ground, but I wanted to draw other things. So this is a graphite grind, because it is definitely a grind trying to learn how to draw other things besides just sexy women. So my focus is mostly drawing different people's faces. And the problem with that is, no matter how good you are, there are a lot of people that will just don't agree with how you draw their face. There are a lot of people that will say bad things about that. So I tend not to draw living people that are disagreeable all the time, because you get like weird opinions because some people just don't want to be drawn. And I'm like, that is a thing, right? Because people will give an opinion on you as a person of your drawing of them. And it's like, so I don't draw other people because they're always being sort of angry about everything nowadays. So it's like, everybody's angry. It's weird. So I don't draw a lot of people's faces, which is another reason why everybody probably just draws anime face. And look, everybody's an anime face now. Some of the best artists don't draw other people. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably a bad situation to draw other people. So I don't tend to do that. But like when it comes to body types, a lot of people do draw some variants of body type. But every once in a while, I'm like, can I do this? Can I draw another person in my style? Can it be done? So I give it a try. So here I am trying. And this face was of a performer that I was trying to collaborate with. And I was like, well, can I draw this person's face? Is it possible? Like, am I good enough of an artist? I've never really shied away from drawing certain things. I just know that some things take multiple takes. So this I didn't fully ink. Some of the lines I did ink, but some of the lines I wasn't too sure about. And I didn't fully ink this. So I was like, is it possible to do a lot of the lines with computer that do the pencil, but sometimes I fully ink, and sometimes I sort of leave the pencils in ink with the computer. I've done that one time when I drew Sue Lightning, which would probably be the next video of me drawing Sue Lightning. And I didn't ink that drawing. It was all pencil, and then I went into the computer and went over the pencil lines. This, I drew it all in pencil and inked some of the lines that I thought needed to be a bit more accurate. And then I went over and, as you can see, I used the computer to embolden the lines. So it's not like some of the other drawings that I've seen where there's a lot of steps. I've seen some people do like some interesting color techniques and shading, but literally 50 steps. So I'm like, I wanted to make my style a bit more versatile, and it's hard to have a versatile style when you have so many steps. You usually have to have a team of people doing things for you instead of you doing things yourself. So I wanted my style to be simple, and I was thinking and reminiscing about early Disney cartoons where they had a team, but they had the credits before the actual animation. And if you look at the credits, there weren't that many people that made those cartoons. Most of the time, the cartoons were black and white. Maybe a little bit of gray shading, maybe not. But they were mostly black and white cartoons. And because of that, there were just less people on the cartoons. Same with some of the Chuck Jones stuff. Like, there were in-betweeners, and maybe the in-betweeners didn't get any credit at all. But back in the day, when it came to like simple art, like a lot of people could do that now with computers, but you can still do it with pencil and paper. Some of the simpler animation techniques where there's a lot of sort of like glorified GIFs, repeating frames and things like that. And I tried that with my intro Zach Tank logo that I put on a lot of my interviews. I sort of take out the background and overlay it on top of some videos of maybe some tigers, or maybe some people dancing, or just stuff that I find. And yeah, it's just a thing that I animated that by hand. I went and did the logo in the computer, and then it was only like maybe 16 to 18 frames for the Zach Tank logo to be animated. I'm definitely going to try more animation in the future. And yeah, going to do my thing. Yeah, just went on and doing animation. Maybe I'll try something a bit more recent and something a bit more reminiscent of old school style, because I like old school style animation. I do like fluid movements. I've been studying like making GIFs, because that's what I used to do, is make some animated GIFs. I did some on my website. I did some animated GIFs, and I did like a mixture of somebody else's animated GIF and mine. But I toy around with that sometimes. But anyways, this is a bit more of a layered technique for me. This is something that I usually don't do, is like any sort of gradients on the colors. I use a lot of flat colors most of the time in my drawings, and a lot of sort of shadows with my inks, and a little bit of hatching and cross hatching. But I didn't do that this time. I was like, let me see if I can do any sort of shading and gradient with computerized colors. So that's mainly what's going on here. Just let me know in the comments, how do you feel about this sort of thing? And yeah, let me know in the comments how you feel about this sort of thing. And give me any thoughts and questions you have. All right.